The wind was cold on the empty planet. Dark mountains stood like giant teeth, cutting the sky into pieces. A lone human walked between the rocks, his boots sinking in soft gray sand. He had been lost for many days, his ship broken, his radio silent. Every night he thought he might die, but tonight, something strange waited for him. As the sun fell, he saw a weak light ahead. At first, he thought it was just his mind playing tricks, but the glow was real, soft and orange, flickering like fire. The man followed it carefully, his heart beating faster with every step. The path led him to the mouth of a cave, wide and dark. Inside, shadows danced on the stone walls. The air smelled of smoke, and he heard a faint sound. It was not the wind, it was not the sound of animals, it was the sound of crying, soft and broken. He stopped, unsure if he should enter. His mind warned him, be careful, it could be a trap. But his heart pulled him forward. He stepped inside, slow and silent. The fire burned in the center of the cave. Its light showed a small group sitting near it. A woman, her skin a strange shade of blue, her hair long like gold. She held two small children close, wrapping her arms around them. The children were thin and shaking, their big eyes filled with fear. The mother looked up at the human, her face both beautiful and tired. Her ears were long and sharp, not human at all. Her eyes glowed softly, as if carrying another world inside them. The man froze, shocked by what he saw. He had heard stories of alien life, but never had he been this close. And here, in front of him, was not a soldier or a monster. It was a mother, protecting her children. The fire cracked, throwing sparks into the air. The cave grew quiet. The only sound was the breathing of the three figures. The woman's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, she looked afraid of him, but then something changed. Ed. She looked at him with hope. The children hid their faces in her arms, but they peeked at him. Their small hands clutched her dress, their ears the same as hers, long and sharp, their skin the same glowing blue, shining in the firelight. The human slowly raised his hands to show he meant no harm. He took a step closer, his boots crunching on the stone floor. The mother whispered something in her own language, soft and trembling. The human did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was begging, begging for safety, begging for mercy. The man felt something deep inside his chest. He remembered his own past, his home far away on Earth. He remembered the night he lost his family, the silence of his empty house. Now here, light years away, he saw the same pain reflected in her eyes. The firelight showed her face clearly. She was young, but her beauty carried sorrow. She looked as if the world had already broken her heart, yet she still fought to protect her children. The man could not move, could not speak. He just watched her, and she watched him. Then a sound came from deep in the cave. A low rumble, a noise that made the children cling tighter to their mother. The woman pressed a finger to her lips, warning him to stay quiet. Her eyes filled with fear again. The human understood. They were not safe. Someone or something was hunting them. He looked around, but he saw only darkness beyond the fire. The cave seemed to stretch forever into shadow. The human's hand moved to the side of his belt where his weapon hung. He had little power left in it, but enough for 1 or 2 shots. He stayed still, listening. The sound faded, leaving only silence, but the warning stayed in the air like a knife waiting to strike. The woman turned back to him. This time she spoke in broken human words, her voice weak but clear. "Please, help my children." Her words cut through the silence, sharp and heavy. The children's eyes turned to him, glowing like small stars. They were not dangerous. They were not enemies. They were only children who wanted to live. The human's throat went dry. He could not find the right answer. He was only one man, alone and lost. But now fate had placed something greater in front of him. The cave was still. The fire burned low. The mother's arms wrapped tighter around her children. Her face was desperate, her tears shining like glass. The man stood in the doorway of choice. Should he help them, or should he walk away? He did not know yet. But one thing was clear. His life and their lives were now tied together by the fire in this cave. And outside, in the cold night, Unseen eyes were already searching for them. The hunters were close, and time was running out. The cave was silent, except for the crackling fire. The human stood still, his shadow long against the stone walls. The alien mother held her children close, her eyes never leaving his face. Her breathing was heavy, but her gaze was full of hope. Finally, she spoke again, her voice trembling, broken, but desperate. "Please, human, do not leave us," she whispered. Her words came slow, each one heavy like a stone. The human could see her lips shaking, her throat dry. She looked weak, like someone who had not eaten for many days. Her hands wrapped around her children, as if letting go would mean losing them forever. The man hesitated. He was not trained for this. He was a soldier, an explorer, a survivor, but never a savior, never a father. Yet something inside him pushed him to listen. The woman continued, her words broken but clear enough to understand. "My people, they left us. They said my children do not belong. They said we are cursed." Her voice cracked. Her tears fell on the heads of her little ones. The children looked at her with wide, innocent eyes, but they did not cry. They had already learned to stay quiet in fear. The human felt his chest tighten. He knew the cruelty of war. He had seen abandoned children on other worlds. But here, in this cold cave, it was different. It was not just another story. It was real. It was in front of him. The children shifted closer to him, their small eyes glowing in the firelight. One of them reached out, touching his rough hand with tiny fingers. The touch was soft, fragile, but it shook him more than any battle ever had. The mother's voice grew sharper, filled with pain. "They will kill my children if they find us. My kind wants us gone. They want us erased." Her head lowered, her hair falling like golden silk across her blue skin. "I have hidden for many nights, but I cannot run forever. I am tired, I am weak, and I cannot do this alone." The human swallowed hard, his throat dry. His mind told him to walk away, to survive on his own. But his heart was no longer listening to logic. The children's eyes were full of trust. The mother's eyes were full of silent pleading. They were no longer strangers. They were a broken family begging for hope. She leaned forward, her voice soft but clear. "I need you, human. I need you to be father for my children, to give them what I cannot." The words struck him like lightning. His breath caught in his chest. He stared at her, unsure if he heard right. Her gaze did not break. Her tears did not hide. She meant every word. For a moment, silence filled the cave again. The fire popped, sending sparks into the dark ceiling. The human looked away, staring at the flames. He remembered his own past, the faces of people he lost on Earth, a family he once had, now gone forever. His heart ached. But here in this cave, he felt something new, a chance to protect again, a chance to belong again. The mother's voice trembled, but her words grew stronger. "I do not ask for myself, I ask for them." She held the children tighter, her hands trembling. They need someone. They need a protector. They need a father. Please, human, please. The children slowly rose, standing on shaky legs. They walked closer to him, their little feet silent on the stone. One child reached his arm, holding on to the human's coat. The other pressed her head gently against his leg. They did not speak, but their actions spoke louder than words. The human felt his knees weaken. He had faced alien beasts. He had faced soldiers with guns. But he had never faced this, a silent plea from children who only wanted love. The firelight reflected in their glowing eyes. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The cave seemed to close around them. The outside world, the war, the danger, all faded for one moment. It was just him, the mother, and her children. A family that did not belong anywhere. A family asking him to become part of them. The mother lowered her head, her voice breaking into a whisper. "If you leave, they will die. I will die. We cannot survive without you." Her words carried no threat, only truth. She was not trying to trap him. She was trying to give her children one last chance. The human's hands trembled. He wanted to speak, but no words came. He looked at the mother again. Her beauty was strange but real. Her eyes were heavy with sorrow, but inside them burned a quiet strength. She was not only beg. Aang, she was fighting to keep her children alive, even if it meant lowering her pride. Her voice rose one last time, echoing in the cave. Please, human, please be the one who stays, not the one who leaves. The fire burned low. Shadows stretched across the walls. The children clung to him now, holding him as if he already belonged to them. The human stood still, his heart battling with his mind. He had not yet answered, but the weight of choice pressed heavier with every second, and far outside, beyond the cave, in the cold silence of night, the hunters searched the valley, moving closer with every step. The family's fate, and his own, was about to be sealed. The cave felt heavier with silence. The fire burned low, throwing weak light across the stone floor. The human stood with the children clinging to his legs, their tiny fingers gripping tightly as if they feared he might vanish. The alien mother sat close to the fire, her eyes shining with tears, her face filled with quiet desperation. She had begged him, and now she waited, her breath uneven, her body trembling from hunger and fear. The human's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to speak, but the words refused to come. His mind screamed at him to stay away, to survive on his own, to not carry a burden that was not his. Yet his heart felt something different, something heavy and unfamiliar. It told him he could not walk away, not now, not after what he had seen. The children looked up at him with wide eyes. They did not speak his language, but their silence spoke louder than any words. Their trust was pure. Their need was simple. They only wanted safety. They only wanted someone who would not leave them. The man had seen soldiers beg for their lives. He had seen enemies cry for mercy, but nothing had ever shaken him like the quiet touch of these small hands. He remembered Earth. He remembered the night he left for the stars, leaving behind a world that no longer felt like home. He remembered the faces of his family, now only ghosts in his memory. He remembered the emptiness, the long nights when survival was the only reason to keep moving. And here, in this cave, far away from everything he once knew, he felt something he had not felt in years. The ache of belonging, the ache of family. The mother's voice broke the silence, soft and trembling. You do not trust me. I see it in your eyes. But I do not lie to you, human. I only want them safe. Her eyes burned with a painful honesty. I do not care for myself. My life means nothing if my children cannot live. They are all I have left. They are my world. The human's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her he understood. He wanted to promise her that everything would be fine. But promises meant nothing in a galaxy that fed on betrayal. He had seen too much death, too much cruelty, yet her words pulled at him, breaking through the armor he had built around his heart. He paced the cave, his footsteps echoing against the stone. He told himself it was impossible. He was one man, one broken soul, lost on a hostile planet. How could he protect them? How could he fight against enemies he did not even know? He felt the weight of the choice pressing on him. If he said yes, his life would never be his own again. If he said no, they would die, and their faces would haunt him forever. The children followed his movement with their eyes. One of them, the smaller girl, tugged on his coat again. She smiled, though her face was pale with hunger. It was not the smile of someone who had hope. It was the smile of someone trying to hold on to it. The man knelt down slowly, his knees touching the cold stone. He looked at her closely, and for the first time, he saw himself in her eyes. Not blue. Not species, but something deeper. The silent bond of survival. The boy leaned against him, resting his small head on the human's chest. The warmth of the child's body went through his armor, through his fear. The man's eyes stung, though he did not understand why. He had not cried in many years, but tonight, in this cave, with strangers who were no longer strangers, he felt his heart breaking open. The mother watched, her lips trembling. She said nothing now, afraid that one wrong word might push him away. She let the silence speak for her. She let the firelight and her tears tell the truth. Her voice could not carry. The human stood again, running his hands over his face. He wanted to scream. He wanted to curse the stars for putting him here. But he stayed quiet, his chest heavy with war inside his own soul. He thought of the hunters outside, the ones searching for her. He thought of how dangerous it would be to stand against them. But then he thought of what would happen if he turned his back and left. The mother dead, the children gone, their small bodies lost in the cold dirt. The image burned in his mind, and he could not shake it. The fire cracked loudly, as if demanding his answer. The mother's eyes glistened in the flames. She whispered once more, her voice soft, almost breaking. "Do not leave us, human. Please, do not let them die." The cave held its breath. The human looked at her, then at the children still holding him. He felt his chest rise and fall, his body heavy with the weight of choice. It was no longer just about survival. It was about meaning. For the first time in years, his life had meaning again. But to accept it, he would have to surrender everything. His mind and his heart fought. His mind told him to stay alone, to live only for himself. His heart told him that life without others was not life at all. He closed his eyes, hearing the echo of his family's voices, hearing the cries of children who were gone long ago. When he opened them again, he saw not strangers, but the chance to build something new. The choice was not easy, but it was clear. Yet, before he could speak, a sound came from outside, the sharp cry of alien hunters cutting through the night. The children froze. The mother's face filled with terror. The human's hand went to his weapon, his heart pounding with fire. The conflict in his soul was not yet over, but soon he would be forced to decide. The cave trembled with the sound outside. The firelight flickered, shadows stretching and twisting across the stone walls. The human froze, his hand resting on the weapon at his belt, his eyes locked on the dark entrance. The alien mother pulled her children close, her arms tightening around them, her body trembling like a leaf in a storm. The children buried their faces into her dress, but their small hands clutched her tightly, refusing to let go. The sound came again, sharper this time. It was a low cry, almost like a horn, echoing through the valley. The human's heart beat fast. He recognized it for what it was. It was a signal, a call used by hunters. They were searching, and they were close. The mother whispered in a broken voice, "They are coming. They will not stop until we are gone." Her eyes shone in the firelight, wide and wet with fear. She looked at the human, not with hope now, but with terror. The cave seemed smaller, the walls pressing in on them. Every crack in the rock felt like it carried 1,000 listening ears. The human stepped forward, closer to the entrance. The cold night air brushed against his face. He looked out and saw faint lights moving in the darkness, small blue torches swaying back and forth as figures moved between the rocks. The hunters were many, their steps echoing across the valley floor. The man's grip on his weapon tightened. He had only a few charges left, not enough for all of them, but enough to make a stand. Behind him, the children whimpered, their small voices breaking the silence. The mother hushed them, whispering softly, holding them close. The human turned back to her. "Stay quiet, stay hidden," he said, his voice low but firm. She nodded, though her eyes still shook with fear. The hunters' voices carried through the air, harsh and sharp. They spoke in a language the human could not understand, but he knew their tone. He had heard the sound of hunters before, on other worlds. It was the voice of killers, the voice of those who chased without mercy. The human's heart battled inside his chest again. He could still leave, slip into the shadows, save himself. But every time his eyes met the children's faces, he knew he could not. They had no one but him, and if he left, their story would end tonight. The thought weighed on him like iron, but it also gave him strength. The mother's voice trembled. "If they find us, they will kill the children first. They call them impurities. They call them shame." Her words cut into him like knives. She looked down at her children, pressing kisses to their heads. Her body shook, but her voice grew sharper. "I will fight for them. I will die for them. But please, human, do not let them take my children." The human's chest burned with fire. He had no answer, but his silence spoke louder than words. He stepped fully into the entrance of the cave, blocking it with his body. The night stretched before him, dark and endless. The hunters' lights grew closer, glowing like moving stars across the valley. The fire behind him hissed, the cave filled with the sound of crackling wood. The children clung to their mother, their glowing eyes fixed on the human's back. To them, he was no longer a stranger. He was a wall between them and death. A thin wall, fragile, but the only wall they had. The human drew his weapon, its faint blue light humming in the night. He knew it would not last long, but he also knew one thing. If tonight was his end, it would not be as a wanderer, it would be as a protector. The thought steadied him, his fear hardened into resolve. The first shadow appeared, tall and thin, stepping out from behind a rock. Its skin glowed faintly under the torch it carried. Its long weapon pointed forward. The human crouched low, his finger hovering near the trigger. More shadows followed, moving like wolves in the dark. They fanned out, their eyes glowing faintly as they scanned the valley floor. The mother gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth to keep silent. Her tears streamed down her cheeks, but her gaze never left the man standing in the cave's mouth. She whispered to her children, "Stay quiet, stay strong, your father is here." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her children looked at her with wide eyes, then back at the human, and in that moment, even without his answer, they believed. The hunters stopped suddenly, their torches lifting higher. They had found the smoke, thin trails rising from the cave. Their leader raised his hand, and the pack began to move toward the entrance. The human's weapon hummed louder, his breath steadying, his eyes narrowed, his body stiff like stone. The time for conflict in his heart was ending. The time for action had arrived. The cave seemed to hold its breath once more. The fire burned low. The children clung tight. The mother closed her eyes, whispering silent prayers into the darkness. And the human, standing tall in the mouth of the cave, prepared himself for the storm that was about to break. The hunters were coming, and tonight there would be no turning back. The hunters closed in, their lights glowing brighter against the night. Their voices carried through the air like pea blades, harsh and filled with hunger. The human stood at the cave entrance, his weapon humming in his hand, his body tense like a drawn bow. Behind him, the alien mother held her children tight, her eyes locked on his back, her breath short and uneven. She did not know if he would fight for them. She only prayed he would not walk away. The human's thoughts raged like a storm. He could hear his own heartbeat louder than the hunter's footsteps. Every voice in his mind argued. One told him to leave, to slip into the shadows and save himself. Another whispered that his life was worth more than dying in a cave for strangers. But deeper, beneath the noise, his heart spoke clearly. It told him that leaving would be worse than dying. It told him that survival meant nothing without something to protect. The children pressed themselves into their mother's arms. They were silent, but their glowing eyes never looked away from him. The boy held the corner of his coat, as if even now he believed the human would not leave. The girl buried her face against her mother, but her tiny hand reached out toward him, trembling yet steady. That small touch, fragile as it was, cut through his doubt like a knife. The human felt his throat tighten. He had lost his family long ago, and he had promised himself never to love again. He thought love made a man weak. But tonight, he realized the truth. Love was not weakness, it was the fire that gave meaning to life, and without it, he was already dead. He turned back for a moment, his eyes meeting the mother's. Her tears glistened in the firelight, her face pale from hunger and fear. But there was something else in her eyes, something stronger, a flicker of hope, a spark waiting to be ignited. She had begged him to be more than a soldier, more than a wanderer. She had begged him to be father, to be protector, to be family, and now, for the first time, he understood that she had not only asked, she had trusted him with everything she had left. The hunter's footsteps grew louder, closer. The human clenched his jaw, his hand gripping his weapon tight. The moment had come. No more running, no more hesitation. He raised his voice, steady and low. "I will not leave you," he said. The words echoed through the cave like a vow. The mother gasped, her tears falling faster, her hands covering her mouth. The children's eyes widened, and for the first time they smiled. Small, broken smiles. The human stepped fully into the entrance, his body blocking the only way in. He stood not as a stranger anymore, but as something more. He stood as their father, their protector, their shield. The mother whispered, her voice breaking with emotion, "You have chosen death for us all." But her tears were not only of fear, they were also of relief, for she knew now that she would not face the end alone, and maybe, just maybe, the end would not come tonight. The human turned his head slightly toward her. "No," he said firmly, "I have chosen life." The words burned in his chest, filling him with strength he had not felt in years. For the first time since leaving Earth, he was not wandering aimlessly. He had purpose, he had family, even if they were not bound by blood. The fire in his heart grew hotter, stronger, unstoppable. Outside, the hunters' torches flickered closer. Their leader's voice rang out, commanding the others. The sound of weapons clashing against rock echoed through the valley. They knew where the family was hiding. The cave would soon be surrounded, but the human did not step back. Instead, he planted his feet firmly on the stone, ready to face whatever came. The children whispered softly to each other, their voices thin and weak, but their smiles did not fade. They looked at the human as if he were already their father, already their hero. The mother bowed her head, whispering prayers to the stars. Her body trembled, but her heart, for the first time in many nights, felt the warmth of hope. The human raised his weapon and took a deep breath. He was no longer alone, no longer lost. This cave was no longer just a place of shadows and firelight. It was home, fragile and temporary, but home, and he would protect it until his last breath. The first hunter stepped into view, tall and sharp, its glowing eyes fixed on the cave. It raised its weapon, the torchlight gleaming off its armor. The human lifted his gun, his finger tight on the trigger, his chest steady, his heart unbroken. For tonight, he was not just a survivor, he was a husband, he was a father, he was human. The cave trembled again with footsteps, more hunters surrounding, more danger pressing in. But in that storm of fear, there was strength. Strength born from the choice he had made, strength born from the family he had chosen. The human's voice rang out once more, low and defiant. "You want them, you'll go through me." The fire roared behind him. The mother gasped, the children clung to her tightly, and the night exploded with the sound of hunters drawing closer. The battle for their lives was about to begin. But now, for the first time, they were not helpless, for now, they had him. The cave shook with the sound of footsteps outside. The hunters' torches lit the valley like moving stars, shadows stretching long across the rocks. The human stood at the mouth of the cave, weapon in hand, his body blocking the only entrance. Behind him, the alien mother clutched her children, whispering to them softly, her tears falling like rain. The fire burned low, its glow weak but steady, as if it too refused to die. The first hunter stepped into view, tall and sharp, its armor reflecting the torchlight. Its weapon gleamed, long and cruel, designed to pierce and tear. It stopped when it saw him, its glowing eyes narrowing in surprise. "I see a human, standing where no human should be." The hunter hissed, raising its weapon, signaling the others to follow. The human's heart pounded, but his hands did not shake. He aimed his weapon and pulled the trigger. A flash of blue light filled the night, striking the hunter square in the chest. The creature fell back with a scream, its torch clattering to the ground. The valley went silent for a breath, then erupted with rage. The other hunters rushed forward, their cries echoing like thunder. The human fired again, his weapon glowing bright in the darkness. 2 more hunters fell, their bodies crashing against the rocks, but for every one that fell, 3 more appeared, their torches closing in on the cave. The human gritted his teeth, stepping back just enough to stay in the entrance. He had to hold them here, he had to protect what was behind him. Inside the cave, the children whimpered, their small bodies shaking. The mother whispered to them, her voice breaking, "Do not be afraid, your father will keep us safe." She did not know if her words were truth or hope, but she spoke them as if they were a shield. The hunters surged forward, their weapons slashing at the air. The human fought with everything he had. His weapon cracked with the light, his fists struck when the energy ran low. He ducked, he rolled, he kicked one hunter into the stone wall. Pain surged through his body, but he ignored it. He could not stop. Not now, not when lives depended on him. One hunter broke past his guard, rushing inside the cave. The mother screamed, grabbing a broken branch from the fire. She swung it wildly, flames dancing in the dark. The hunter hissed, backing away from the sudden blaze. Her arms trembled, but she stood firm, shielding her children with her body. The firelight reflected in her glowing eyes, showing a strength the human had never seen before. The man roared, his voice echoing like thunder. He lunged forward. Tackling the hunter to the ground, they rolled across the stone, the creature slashing with claws. The human slammed his fist again and again. Finally, his weapon lit once more, and he fired, the light piercing the hunter's chest. The creature went still, the cave silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. More hunters crowded outside, their torches bright against the night. The leader stepped forward, taller than the rest, its armor marked with scars of many battles. It raised its weapon high and shouted a command. The hunters spread out, surrounding the cave like wolves around prey. The human stood tall, blood on his face, his body bruised, but his eyes burned with fire. Behind him, the mother clutched the children, whispering, "You see, he is strong. He will not let them take us." The children nodded, their fear softening into fragile trust. They looked at the human not as a stranger anymore, but as their protector, their father. The leader of the hunters stepped closer, its eyes locked on the human. It pointed at the children and hissed in its sharp language. The mother understood, her face twisting with horror. "They call them filth. They say they will erase them tonight," she whispered. Her tears fell fast, but her voice grew sharp. "No, not while he still stands." The human's chest rose and fell, his breath heavy. He felt his strength fading, but his heart burned hotter than ever. He knew he could not win against them all, but he also knew he would never let them pass. He raised his weapon one last time. "If I die tonight," he whispered, "then I die as their father." The hunters charged again, their cries filling the valley. The human fired, each shot a flash of defiance. The mother screamed and swung her burning branch. The children pressed their faces against her. The cave became a storm of light, fire, and fury. Stone cracked, voices roared, pawns clashed. The battle shook the mountain itself. The human fought until his arms ached, until his breath burned. Every strike, every shot, every step was for them. He was not fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for family. For the first time in years, he knew what it meant to be alive. The hunters fell back, regrouping, their leader shouting commands. The human staggered, his knees weak. But he did not fall. The mother's eyes locked on him, her lips trembling. "You are ours now," she whispered, and in that moment, even in the chaos of battle, he believed it. The fire roared high, the night echoed with screams. The hunters prepared for another wave. The human tightened his grip, his body broken, but his spirit unshaken. The family behind him clung together, their faith stronger than their fear. And as the storm of enemies rushed once more, the man stood tall, unyielding. He was no longer just a survivor. He was father, he was protector, he was human. The night slowly gave way to the first light of morning. The valley, once filled with fire and screams, now lay in silence. The hunters were gone, their bodies scattered among the rocks, their torches dim, their voices silenced. The cave still smelled of smoke and blood, but inside it, there was life. The human leaned against the stone wall, his weapon cracked and broken, his body heavy with pain, but his eyes still open. The alien mother crawled to his side, her children clinging to her arms. Her hands shook as she touched his shoulder, afraid he might not rise again. "Human," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You stayed." Tears streamed down her blue cheeks, her golden hair tangled and burned at the edges, but her eyes shone with light. The children pressed close to him, their small glowing eyes wide, their little hands reaching for him as if he were already part of them. The human looked at them and felt a strange warmth in his chest. The battle had taken everything he had, but in return it had given him something he had not known he still wanted. Family. He had come to this planet broken, lost, wandering without purpose. Now, sitting in the ruins of a night filled with death, he felt alive, because he had something worth living for. The mother cupped his face with her trembling hand. "You are father now," she whispered. "You are ours." The words pierced him deeper than any blade. He closed his eyes, breathing slow and heavy, and when he opened them again, his answer was clear. "Yes," he said softly, "I am yours." The children smiled for the first time, small, fragile smiles that lit up the cave. The boy leaned against his chest. The girl hugged his arm. Their touch gave him strength, more than any weapon ever could. The mother pressed her forehead against his, tears falling between them. She had begged for hope, and against all odds, she had found it. Outside the cave, the sky grew brighter. The dark stars faded as the sun began to rise. Its light spilled across the valley, turning the rocks gold and the smoke silver. The world, once filled with shadows, now carried the promise of a new beginning. The human stood slowly, his legs weak, but his spirit unbroken. He looked out at the dawn, the children holding each of his hands, the mother standing beside him. They were no longer just survivors, they were a family. The valley was quiet, but he knew danger was not gone. The hunters would return one day, and the world was still hostile. But for the first time in many years, he was not afraid. He had something worth fighting for, something worth dying for, and that gave him a strength no enemy could take away. The mother whispered softly, "You gave us life when all we had was death. You gave us hope when all we had was fear." Her voice broke, but her eyes stayed strong. "You are not alone anymore, human, and we are not alone anymore either." He looked at her, and in her face he saw not only sorrow, but also courage. She was beautiful not because of her golden hair or glowing eyes, but because she refused to give up. And he knew in his heart that together they could endure anything. The children tugged at his hands, their voices soft. "Father," the boy whispered. The word broken, but clear enough to understand. The man's chest tightened, his eyes stung. It was the first time anyone had called him that since his own family was lost. He knelt down, holding both children close, his arms wrapping around them. "You are safe now," he said. "I will never leave you." The cave behind them, once a place of fear, now felt like the birthplace of something new. It had been filled with fire, blood, and tears, but it had also become the place where a bond stronger than any war was forged. The mother smiled faintly, her tears drying on her cheeks. The children laughed softly, their fear fading into trust. The human stood again, carrying both children in his arms. The mother walked beside him, her hand brushing against his. Together, they stepped out into the dawn. The sun rose higher, warming their skin. The sky turned from black to blue. The planet, hostile and wild, now felt less empty, because in that wide, dangerous world, they were no longer alone. They walked forward, leaving footprints. In the soft sand, 3 small ones and 1 larger side by side, a trail that spoke of a family born not by blood, but by choice. The human looked ahead and whispered to himself, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." The wind carried his words across the valley, as if the planet itself listened, and as they walked together under the rising sun, the shadows of the night fell away. They were broken souls, but together they were whole. They were not just survivors, they were a family, and no force in the galaxy could take that from them.